Hello. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, I have a question. How many, raise your hands, know that some of the most advanced vehicles on Earth are on farms? Okay,
We're
good.
supposed to know.
Great. You got your people. All right, so we're going to start with some introductions. I'm Jennifer Strong. I create audio series, including In Machines We Trust, which is a show about automation, and I'm a journalist director at MIT Technology Review. Guys, want to go next?
I'm Barry Lunn. I'm founder and CEO of Provisio, where we're taking a safe approach to autonomy. So we start with the edge cases and why we crash and why accidents happen, and we work towards autonomy. So slightly the opposite direction to everyone else.
Yeah. And hi, I'm Praveen Penmetsa. I'm the CEO at Monarch Tractor, where we're building an all-electric, fully autonomous smart tractor. And we are targeting the fruits and vegetables market. And our whole mission is to make farmers profitable and then move the food ecosystem to sustainability. Because unless the farmers are profitable, it's going to be hard for them to change their operations and focus on sustainability.
All right. Let's start with some level setting, which is going to be hard because it's not level across all the different forms of automation on a farm. But Praveen, maybe you want to go first.
Yeah, it's a good comment, Jennifer, that you and Barry made, right? That there's a lot of technology on farms is our perception. And if you think about big agriculture, right, especially in the Midwest of the US, where crops such as corn, soy, etc., you do see a lot of technology out on the farm. You see these big tractors, with GPS positioned autonomy systems where the driver is more focused on not driving the tractor, but the operations. But then amazingly, when you go to the fruits and vegetables farmers, most of whom are smaller, and now we are talking about tens of acres, hundreds of acres, maybe a few thousand acres in certain areas, there's no technology at all. And the reason for that is they are under tremendous margins pressure to where they cannot invest into that tech. And also it's a harder technology problem that companies such as Monarch and Barry's are working on solving, right? So there's a huge disparity there. And that's the gap that we need to fill. And with some of the latest and greatest tech coming along, there's now for the first time opportunities to put the best of technology into the hands of the smallest farmers who are growing our food for us.
Do you want to add in there?
Yeah, no, and I think very similar. I think in agriculture is what you have in the automotive space as well. At almost the levels of autonomy, we probably shouldn't even address them because it's when is it level 5? When does it need to be level 5, or when does it need to be level 0 or have? And I think, but I do think farms are a really good place to try out this type of technology as well because they have some tough conditions, but they also have some really easy driving, right? Like straight lines, lots of that, and repetitive things like that. But there's a safety issue on farms as well. So I think for me, it's like you can only have level 5 when you can absolutely guarantee that machine will never cause a problem or cause an accident on a farm, right? So that's where I think you start to work with farmers. You start to work with what are the problems that you can solve, and that goes beyond. To me, it goes beyond autonomy, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's another question for everybody. How many folks know that, is it the most dangerous work on the earth or pretty close?
Yeah, it's the third most dangerous profession in the world is actually agriculture and farming. I'm not sure how many of us are conversant with that, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just because of things like equipment safety, but it's also because of exposure to chemicals. These are all things that are not conducive to put somebody out in the middle of the farm while you're spraying some of these dangerous chemicals. The driving seat on a tractor, especially on some of the smaller farms, is the most dangerous place to be on a farm because that's where most of these accidents happen. But again, after construction and mining, agriculture is the third most dangerous profession on the planet.
Right. So maybe the next thing that would be helpful, since you guys do such different things, could you each dig a little bit more into what it is you do precisely before we get back out into the big picture?
Yeah. So on my side, at Monarch Tractor, what we saw was, a lot of our fruits and vegetables farmers were really struggling with three main things, right? Number one is definitely the move towards sustainability was applying even more pressure on them. Yeah. It's hard to go green if your business is in the red. And only 42% of farmers in the US make money. A lot of fruits and vegetables farmers around the world are actually in a poverty condition, right? They're basically just surviving. So for that kind of an ecosystem, for us to transition that into a sustainable farming where they need to invest more, do more, is hard. The second thing that they were struggling with is there's just been an outflow of talent and labor from farming. The average age of farmers around the world is very high. In certain countries, it's now in the high 60s. In Japan, it's around 68 years, right? In the US also, it's in the high 50s. So the younger generation is not coming into farming because they see it as a lack of opportunity, creativity, and profitability. So, and the third thing that we are seeing is the lack of data, right? Here's my question is, we all know the name of the DoorDash person that bought you your delivery, but we don't know how our food was grown, when was it harvested, or what happened to it. How many chemicals went into it, right? So we have to bridge this gap between the farmer and the customer. Yeah. We have to make that relevant. So at Monarch Tractor, we built an all-electric tractor so that we can reduce the cost of diesel for the farmers, autonomous so that they can reduce on labor costs, and smart so that they can use that data to tell their story to the consumer and hopefully make more money and use that to increase their revenues and profits. So that's what we do at Monarch Tractor. That's why it's an all-electric, autonomous, smart tractor.
What we do isn't nearly as cool as that. So we do the perception bit, right? So how I ended up in this space was autonomy was failing, right? And it was failing because of the edge cases. And the edge cases are the same reasons we all crash and have problems in vehicles, right? Yeah. Weather, not being able to see beyond line of sight and that side of things. So that's what we build. We build what we consider obviously the best perception system in the world that's capable of seeing all these things that you couldn't previously see. But the most important bit is we build it at a price point that it can go on any vehicle, right? That was our goal, because $250,000 worth of sensors on a vehicle isn't going to be rolled out ubiquitously, so it isn't going to solve safety on farms, right? If it costs that. So we've built that at a price point that can go on every vehicle. So that's kind of how we've now ended up moving into agriculture. Yeah. So there's a big pull there. Like our main market is automotive. I was here with a car last year, so we haven't left that space. But there's a real pull in this sector because safety is a big thing for them. Automation is, people want that as well. But the stuff you talked about, the data, that's the stuff I find amazing. For example, our perception stacks can actually do yield analysis and tell what they're going to get. So there's all this really cool side data that you're getting while you're out there trying to solve the safety problem and just automate the farm, right?
Yeah. I want to talk about what's hard, and there's a lot of reasons for this to be hard in agriculture, starting with, computers and tech don't love sun, water, heat, mud, and then you think, what percentage of farm labor, I don't have recent data, it's probably 4 years old, but it was like 40-something% of labor on a farm didn't use a smartphone at the same time that farms are bringing in CTOs to try to manage across dozens of apps in many cases that, there's no dashboard for yet because we're still early. I mean, speaking in very general terms, there are some, but you know what I mean? It's more or less you're working off an iPad. But what is hard for you, for each of you? What is your biggest challenge right now?
I think on our side, it's definitely, being able to build hardware that is robust enough, what we call ag robust at Monarch, that can survive the elements of the farm. And you brought up a great point, is it's much harsher than even what you see on the car side in certain cases. Yeah. The reason for that is cars have suspensions, reasonably good roads, right? And then you're out on a farm and there's no suspension on a tractor, so the perception stack has to be really good on the hardware side and on the software side. And the second thing there is you have to work in all conditions. Yeah. Right? Very often, there's things like the tractor itself is spraying things, right? So there's a cloud of spray, and you have to work 24/7 just because of the time constraints of farming. Right. But that is also the important part. And the reason I'm excited to be here and why everybody else should be excited too is there's now solutions like companies like ours are getting us onto the farm. We are solving the hard problems of perception, autonomy, and collecting that data on the farm with our hardware, which now is becoming accessible to the larger group of people to start using, to start creating applications on top. Yeah. So we will chuck that data up into the cloud, and now you can start to build applications, and we'll see a whole host of companies coming up. But the hardest part is on the ground, and that's not something a satellite or a drone can answer. You have to be on the ground on a tractor. So
yeah, and I think for us especially, we set up the company to solve the hard bit, right? So we love the misery. We love getting stuck into that. So for me and the team on a day-to-day basis, that's kind of the hard stuff isn't the hard stuff. The hardest thing, we'll talk tech all day, we'll build tech all day, we love it, like we're really into it. The hard bit is actually achieving the price points that need to be gotten to in this sector, dealing with big companies. The companies are just monstrous, right? I mean, it's so refreshing to talk to Praveen about Monarch, a startup with that attitude. But like the big boys, they're even themselves, they find it hard to unpack their own organization. In fact, I had a meeting with someone yesterday evening, and I was explaining to them how their own company worked, because they were trying to work out how they could get to another part of that. So that, to me, that's the hard bit, right? Getting, because it's so obvious for us, everyone should have this technology, right? So that's the frustration of a founder. You're like, everyone needs it, we're doing it, and we've it at a price point you need, but you've all this red tape to get through, and obviously safety critical devices, they have to, you have to go through that process too, but.
Well, I think it's important to also point out that, we talk about agriculture like it's one thing. It's very different when you're talking about commodity crops and versus specialty crops means like fruits and vegetables, right? And there's a lot of technology available for these very large commodity crops, and in part, you think about it, it is easier to teach a machine to know the difference between soy plant, not a soy plant, right? But how do you deal with fruits and vegetables which don't grow in a uniform way around the plant or tree, and all these things are different heights? We used to make the joke that we're getting closer to figuring out making jet fuel from ice on the moon than we are how to pick an apple, with a robot. So I'm wondering, for you, like, what do you see in this space as next?
Yeah. And that's definitely the framing of the problem, Jennifer, that you have done, right? Is all of us care about our fruits and vegetables more. Right. It's also the tougher problem that companies like ours are trying to solve, and we need more people to join that movement. And what we are seeing there is huge opportunity. The reason for that is our fruits and vegetables markets, right, have like 5 to 8 times the number of people are needed for operations compared to your commodity crops. Also, from a data quality standpoint and digital application standpoint, the great thing is consumers care about where your apples, your blueberries, and your strawberries come from. We don't care that much about where our corn fuel comes from that goes into fueling your car or feeding our dairy, right? So there's a huge digital opportunity here on the data side, just because of the inefficiencies in our food production, especially on fruits and vegetables. But that's also a challenging bit because farmers these days are pretty compressed on the margin side. Barry made a great point. You have to bring the cost of those products down. So what we see is it's a dynamic environment. There's no mapping. There's no digital tools. They're very much still in a paper world, which means the opportunity for us to apply technology and show a value on it is tremendous. That's why we are excited about what we're doing. And that's why we are intentionally focused on the fruits and vegetables market and the small farmers around the world. And we are also building a platform to enable other companies to write applications on top of our data that we're collecting, so that we all can kind of advance food sustainability and make the farmers more profitable.
Well, and all the things you lay out make safety even more important, because you're dealing with more people and more variability.
Absolutely, and different challenges. Like I don't have that privilege of being able to say we're going to focus on the fruit and veg, because it's determined by the OEMs we sell to. It's great being an OEM. I should have thought of that. I should have gone your way. But so for example, you can go out and build a perception system and say this is great, and then we're out harvesting last week and the crop is 5 meters high, right? So if you just go out there with a camera and you go into that 5 meter high crop, you've got nothing, right? You're selling nothing there. So that creates a whole other set of challenges as well, and that's where kind of radar comes in, because radar is actually able to penetrate that, and then you're trying to, there's all these weird things that are out there, and I think they're completely untapped. So it's really nice. It's like a gold mine, and especially if you're into AI, ML, anywhere there's untapped data is exciting. So
well, you can tell I care about this. I grew up in a farming community. I get excited about this issue. I don't understand why they're having a recruiting problem, to be honest, because we all eat. A lot of people drive, but all of us eat, and it just seems like one of the great challenges is so much potential to play. But we're going to be wrapping up out of time fairly soon. So before we get too much further, I'd love to ask each of you to talk about what you see as like the next 5 years for what you're doing.
Barry? Yeah.
You go for it.
So on our side, I think this is going to be the next big industry to get transformed, right? We have seen our automotive industry and the mobility industry get transformed, and both Barry and I have played roles in helping that transformation. We have seen our energy sector get transformed. We all now are seeing cleaner sources of energy. And the next big thing, and the reason all of us are now hearing the words food security for the first time, right, and are starting to care about it, is going to lead to the transformation of the food and ag industry, which means there's going to be tremendous opportunity for technology and technology companies to come in, and also for new people to come in, and new companies will be built here. Right? So we see the next 5 years being the transformation of our food and food ecosystem, which is why I come from the mobility world. I played roles in the energy world before, but I'm more excited by the food world than anything else, because you made a great point, Jennifer, right? That all of us eat, but somehow we have lost our connection to how our food is grown. And I think we need to refine that connection, and all of us need to play a role in that.
Yeah, I think, and like when I hear that, and it's great, like getting to speak to people like Praveen, and every day you're inspired to go, right, we have got to get this technology into more applications, right? And so we're working in mining, we're working obviously in automotive and all that side as well. And each time you're seeing safety is critical here. We need to get this technology. So it's more of a mission than a business decision that we just have to get this rolled out. We have got to make this level of perception ubiquitous. And we have to solve the farming problem, right? Because we do have food crisis issues, and we have all that. And so I think that to me is what excites me over the next number of years, is getting to a ubiquitous nature on this technology.
Speaking of ubiquity, though, what we haven't talked about is who each of you partner with. So, I mean, because you are doing things that exist today. These are not PowerPoint companies. So maybe if you want to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, that is the biggest challenge in ag is also it's fairly risk averse, and it needs to be, right? Like, for example, if we deploy a technology at scale and we break all the technology on the farm, we're going to pay a price for that on the food prices, food security, and a lot of the economies of countries, if you look at the percentages of GDP, are driven by the food and ag world. So it's a very risky industry to kind of get in there and not be deliberate and thoughtful. Deliberate and thoughtful also means that we have to respect all the players in the ecosystem today and what they bring to the table. Whether it's equipment companies, like Barry's talking about, these very big companies that are there. That's chemical companies, seed companies, retailers, food processors, and of course the consumers. So we have to work with all of these ecosystem players in ensuring that whatever we are doing is in alignment with what they're trying to do. But when I think of the challenge, I'm also excited by the opportunity. Right? There's so many verticals for technology companies and for people to have a role in. Right? You can play a role at the retailer, logistics and distribution, food equipment processing, food processing, and you can go all the way back to the farm and play a role on the farming and the growing of the food itself. Huge opportunities across the board, but we do have to respect the players there. If you don't respect the retailers or the equipment companies or the seed companies or the input companies, inputs are basically everything from fertilizers to seed companies, we'll pay a price, and we can't afford to as a growing population.
True. Anything you want to add there? You get the last word, last
yeah,
20 seconds.
I was happy to let him go there because I have so many NDAs signed at this stage. I'm not allowed. I mean, it's hilarious. All these big guys, no one wants anyone knowing what they're doing. You know some of the players in this, right? But they're apparently allowed to talk about what we're doing. So I do know. I can remember working with Class Tractors, for example, because they talked about it. They didn't ask me first.
Oh.
But yeah, but it's those OEMs, the big guys. That's who we're dealing with.
I think with that, we're out of time. Unfortunately, I feel like we could keep on going here, but a big round of applause for our
Thanks a lot.
guests. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jennifer.
All right, guys.